everybody, and welcome to a brand new spoiler review episode of The Penguin here on Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek
Buddies.
Hey!
Yeah. Woo, we are back with quite an episode here that we got in this one entitled Bliss, written by Noel Valdivia and directed by Craig Zobel. I think this is the extent to which Michael Vogel has watched The Penguin, the first 3 episodes, right? This is where we have the cutoff, and then we're all on the same page to keep going with The Penguin and seeing it fresh and new. Yes,
I wasn't going to mention that, but you would be correct, yes.
but this was quite an episode. We get Victor's backstory. We get more with Sofia and Oz as they stumble into this partnership but have old issues to hammer out. We get the Triads. We get some interesting Easter eggs. We get a couple of villains possibly teased from the DC comics. So there was a lot in this episode as Bliss takes over Gotham. So we're going to break it all down. Let's introduce ourselves first. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies.
I am Michael Vogel, writer and what am I? Yeah, no, I am. I am a writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies. It's Monday morning, guys. I'm easing into my coffee.
Right on.
And this is Shannon McClung. I am an animation writer and a television actor, as well as a voiceover actor. All 10 episodes of Dream Sequence are available right now from Realm and Blumhouse Media.
Nice. And this is a spoiler review, so just letting you know now, this is a spoiler review. So if you haven't watched the episode, go back and watch. If you don't care, then stick around. We're going to talk about it and break it all down. Michael, I'd like to go to you first. Here we go. Episode 3, Bliss. As I mentioned, a lot happened in this one. Your overall thoughts?
Well, as you said, this is the last one that I'd seen, so I kind of knew it was coming. Can I say something about just the Gotham flood separate from the rest of the episode first before we kick in? I was thinking about this. I know there's been a lot of talk on social media this week because Variety posted that article about how do you deal with toxic fans and bringing in like a group of a focus group of fans. And I think what we have been seeing in the Penguin with the Gotham flood is the perfect example of why you don't want to do that. I think most of us, even those of us who really like the Batman, the Robert Pattinson Batman, all sort of agreed that the third act flood in Gotham felt a little rushed, felt a little too much, felt a little bit like, oh, you added this thing in the last minute. And there's a world in which you say, the flood part didn't work, let's move on from that.
Yeah.
But when you watch not only just the whole the entire series of the Penguin taking place after this Gotham flood and how that has really forced people into extreme positions, both the elite level of Gotham and the poor level of Gotham. But when you watch the opening of this episode and you see that flood from Victor's perspective and what it does to Victor's family, you realize that this thing that maybe didn't work perfectly in the end of the Batman is actually gold for Matt Reeves' Batman universe.
Yeah.
Like, it is such a great event in Gotham that really grounds you. You understand where everything took place at the beginning of this episode. You understand the stakes. You know what's about to happen to Victor's family, and the way that they show it is so horrific. And it just really establishes where this version of Gotham City is. And I just think the flood, as someone who wasn't the biggest fan of the flood at the end of that movie, I think what they're doing with the flood is really fucking brilliant. And as with everything, like everything else in this episode is great too. I think Victor's arc in this episode kicking off from the flood was amazing. And I think really deepening our understanding of the Penguin's, of Oz's relationship with Sofia and what happened in the past and how that maybe tweaks a story that he told Victor an episode ago, and you're like, okay, that's not exactly what you told Victor, but okay, I see where this is going in typical Oz fashion. So loved the episode, loved the use of the flood, just really loving everything that they're doing here. This is, to Warner Brothers and everybody working in DC, this is how you handle a Batman villain, as opposed to other ways that you might be handling Batman villains currently, apropos of nothing else that we might be talking about this week.
I gotta be me. I guess I could have gone a musical route with that. Shannon, your overall thoughts with this particular episode? So much to explore. I think Michael hinting at it, this relationship with Oz and Sofia, there's a lot of trauma and betrayal and damage that was done there. And then we see the trauma from Victor's side of the damage that was done by the flood and the trauma he's suffering later on in the club with the PTSD and his battles with himself about what he should do with his life in 2 critical moments in this episode. Your thoughts overall?
I mean, again, I haven't seen the future of the episodes. But this is, I have to think they are off to the races now, because this
Yeah.
was the best episode, and like all 3 episodes have been great. This one is by far my favorite episode. The acting continues to be top notch. Renzi Feliz is just doing wonderful work, and just getting to see where he came from and how events in Gotham have shaped his person. Also, Oz continues to be a fascinating character, literally using every arrow in his quiver. Sometimes he's going to be manipulative, sometimes he's going to be sincere, sometimes he's going to be physically intimidating, and they all are a joy to watch on screen. And Kristen Milioti is just awesome. The way she can cut you down with a look is absolutely chilling. And love that we got to spend a little more time with Michael Kelly, who I think is just fantastic.
Yeah, Michael Kelly with a phone in his mouth for sure. Great stuff in this episode. Yeah, I love this episode. I thought it was really strong. This is one of those ones that you just watch multiple times because there is so much going on, not just with the overall action, but in the minutia, in the interactions between Oz and Sofia, between Victor and Oz. And we see what I've been saying, at least in my opinion, what I've been saying is that Victor is completely trying to enter into a codependent, toxic relationship Oz is trying to enter into a codependent, toxic relationship with Victor and lure him into the stuff because that's what Oz had with Sofia, possibly, and certainly what Oz learned from his mom. So there's a lot to untangle here. This is a psychiatrist's wet dream with what's going on with all of these characters, but they're fascinating. And I still think, even after the end of this episode, that Victor is going to be a hero at some point. I still believe this, even though it all feels like it's going one way. But Lauren LaFranc said at the end in that documentary thing.
Sweet that you think so.
She said, yeah, it's good. She said that Victor is the heart of the show, and that to me means something. So the way we're going to break this thing down today is we're going to break each of the storylines down into 2 separate sections. So I'm just going to toss out what happened and hear from these gentlemen what their opinions are. So let's start with Victor, because we'll do Victor and then we'll do Oz and Sofia. So we get the opening flashback. As I mentioned here, we see what happens. We meet his family, we meet his mom, we meet his sister, we meet his dad. We have these interactions with his dad about wanting more, his dad maybe being screwed over by his boss. This idea, and he leaves the house saying basically it's not a shame to want more, which is a nice kind of echo into what we're going to see a little bit later. We see his affection for Graciela, his girlfriend there, who of course was calling him in the previous episode. We see Squid on the rooftop, who may or may not be Lawrence Lohman, the future Gotham crime lord. We will see. And then he witnesses the Riddler's attack in the flood and the death of his entire family, which was a pretty harrowing opening. Then later he meets Sofia. He gets $1,000 a week salary, hangs with Graciela when Oz tells him he's got to hang back because Sofia wants Oz to be her driver again. He agrees to leave Gotham, Victor does, with Graciela. Victor bribes later on at the club there, or at the opening, at the meeting with the Triad guy. Victor bribes a Gotham City Police Department guy who essentially racially profiles Victor for being a young kid of color in a nice car. So let's just stop there in Victor's storyline. Mike, a lot here with the opening flood in the backlash, or the flashback, but then the situation with Graciela, and then Victor getting $1,000 a week, and then of course what happens there with the GCPD cop, which may have been teasing the future GCPD series, but we will see. Michael, your thoughts on these opening scenes here with Victor?
As I already said, I think the whole opening, using what the Riddler did and using the flood of Gotham to sort of establish things, was just great. And I think actually elevated, as I said, elevated to me, in my opinion, what the Riddler did in the devastation. I mean, particularly given the fact that the Riddler's entire thing was, I'm going to take out Gotham's rich and elite. Yeah. And ultimately what he does just fucks over all the poor of Gotham, yes, way more than it fucks over the elite. So way to go, Edward. But I do think, I actually thought of John, this scene with Victor's family at the beginning, very quick scene. Very, very quick scene. We don't spend a ton of time with Victor's family, but boy, do they use that scene great.
Yeah.
You get immediately that Victor's relationship with his dad is the exact inverse of Oz's relationship with his mom. Oz's mom is constantly telling him that he is not enough, that he should try harder, that her life is a loser life, and so her son is a loser. Like it's constantly you need to be better, you need to be better, you need to claw your way to the top. Victor and his sister are clearly straining against where they are in their life, wanting more, but their dad is very much like, look, we have so much more than where we came from. Like, what we have is great. What we have is enough. We don't need more. Now, you could argue like that's really sweet and that's great. You could also argue that is not fair, that his dad is hard worker. His dad is clearly being screwed over in some ways and deserves more of an opportunity. But either way, the most important part here is that Victor as a person, before he ever met Oz, loved where he lived. It's an interesting thing because then he goes to the scene with Graciela. He loves Crown Point.
Yeah.
He feels good about it. He loves where he came from, but he clearly does have that part of him that wants more. So this very quick scene before we get the devastation of the flood establishes kind of who Graciela is to Victor and what her perspective is, wanting to get out of Crown Point, not loving it there. Victor's family and what they represent to him before you see this whole very, very traumatic thing happen. So I thought that was all very, very interesting. Then poor Victor, Oz putting Victor in a room and being like, I got to go in the other room and take this call. Can you hang out with the serial killer and tell him that? And, Chris Milioti, in the comic books, Sofia Falcone is huge.
Yeah.
She is physically intimidating. Like, she is a big woman. Chris Milioti is not. But what she is doing is making her huge. Like, the way she does everything. I also really loved... I love that she calls Oz's apartment tacky.
Yes.
And then in the scene that we're going to talk, and then when Graciela comes in with Victor, she's like, oh, this is really bougie. This is really fancy. Like, again, you just see like all the different levels of like Sofia Falcone representing like the super rich elite of Gotham that can do whatever they want. Victor coming from Crown Point, not having anything, and Oz being in the middle as someone who has clawed his way up to a certain point, but definitely between him and Sofia, there's that old money, new money kind of thing.
Yes.
So I thought a lot of really, really interesting stuff there. And the entire scene with her, any scene where Sofia is sizing you up and just staring at you is very uncomfortable. In all the best ways. Like she literally does this thing, and she did it to Johnny Vitti, and she does it to Victor, where she stares at you like a predator. Like, you just don't know what she's thinking. You don't know what she's gonna do, and you're just on edge the entire time. And it is one of the best parts of the show anytime she's in a scene.
Yeah.
And you see with her and Oz, like, Oz tells Victor, he's like, we're all going, you're driving, whatever. And she instantly is like, that's not how we're doing it. We're doing this. You're driving like old times. And you see that she is still in charge of all of this as they head off. But yeah, then Graciela coming in, I think they did such a nice job of laying out these stakes for Victor. And Graciela as a character, I love the way that she doesn't come in and go right off the bat, you need to come with me, this is bad. Because realistically, Victor's life is better. Like, he's making money now. He's in this, and it's not until he says, I don't know if he'll let me leave, and reveals that he's a gangster, that Graciela's like, oh, you need to get out of here. Like, yes, this looks nice on the surface, but this is not good underneath. You need to come with me. And really creating that choice for Victor. I thought they did a great job with that scene. I thought the two of them were really, really good. I don't know. I think he's doing such a killer job in this role that, in a world where, as John mentions, every time, oh, that guy's name is Carl. In Detective Comics, there was a guy wearing a mustard suit named Carl. I bet this is a reference to this. Like, Victor is this wholly new character, and I just think he's been really brought to life in a lovely way. Yeah. And watching his journey as sort of a representation of a level of what Oz went through. And so sort of seeing what Victor's journey and knowing it sort of mirrors where Oz came from, but where those paths are going to diverge, where they're going to come together. I don't know. I think they're doing such a great job with him. So I really enjoyed everything leading up to this point in the episode where he was sort of given that choice. Like, because up till this point, Victor has been an unwilling participant. Like, he's like, Oz pulled him in and it was like, you're going to do this or I'm going to kill you.
Right.
So like he doesn't really have that moral choice. This was the episode that ultimately he makes the choice. So now he's in by his own volition.
Yeah, we'll see that in just a second. And here's just a comparison between Sofia Falcone and the Comics and Kristen Milioti in there. And of course, even bigger picture there, as you can see in that particular frame. But yeah, Shannon, your thoughts on Victor and what they're setting up here, the opening here with the loss of his family, them meeting Sofia, Penguin offer him $1,000 a week to kind of lure him into this life. And then the stuff with Graciela, and then getting with the GCPD cop and bribing him off, being smart enough to realize how corrupt the world is. Your thoughts?
This is a gorgeously shot show. And they really do I don't know what the budget is, but whatever budget they have for special effects, which would not just include the flood, it would be sort of, building out what's in the background. They are using that money very, very wisely, because it just looks and feels like a real place. Looking at the contrast between Victor being at home with his family, how it's very warm, it's very golden, and then you get to Oz and it's stark and it's metal and it's brick and it's hard and it's unforgiving. Like, there's just a lot of thought and care put into the show. Watching the way his interactions with his family, you could see like his dad does believe in doing the right thing, but in the course of doing that, he is possibly being taken advantage of. And that's what Victor doesn't want. It's not that he doesn't think well of how his father plays the game, but he's just like, you're doing things in one way and you're coming out on the short end. You're coming out with the short end of the stick. And that's not what he wants. Like, I think Victor we know Victor's a good guy. Like, he comes from a good family. But he's also seen what playing by the rules does. And it's just super, super lovely. Like, watching the way he reacts on the roof when Squid gets there. Like, this is the guy that my dad said I don't need to be around. And then again, just watching the devastation that occurs as these bombs start to go off. And as folks who know the Batman, like, we know what's about to happen. But it is still all the more terrible because we know what's coming. And also the guilt that he probably feels that had I stayed with my family for this one last meal, we all would have gone together. Now I didn't. I did what I wanted to do. And now I am completely by myself, except for this one guy who may or may not kill me day in and day out. I love the line of dialogue, like why Sofia would mention Castillo or her brother to this kid. He's just like, what if she says something? He's like, tell him he had something to do with both of their deaths. See how that goes. Like, it's just really, really, it's really scary, but also it's really, really fun. And the dynamic the very brief dynamic that Sofia and Vic have is just a lot of fun to watch. I mean, the fact that he is a mechanic, sort of, but he can't operate a lighter. And you can see how Sofia, as Vogel already put, Sofia is sort of dissecting him with her eyes. Like, it's just so fun. The lovely relationship that he has with Graciela and the potential that could have been there had these terrible things not happened. Just so nice to watch. And then that interaction with the cop. I mean, obviously Gotham is full of corrupt police officers, but just him pouncing on that stammer that he has, and the way Vic's eyes lit up when Oz says, I'm going to pay you $1,000 a week. And in an instant, that money is gone.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, it's so sad, but at the same time, he played it so exactly well. I mean, I think this show is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, for me, this is a fantastic opening. And these scenes with Victor are just solidifying my belief that he will end up becoming a hero at some point. He comes from good stock. His family cares about him. But it's easy when you're a kid to tell a parent how they should be in the world when they have no idea and never been out there and seen it. And so this idea that he could be, oh, well, you're getting taken advantage of, Dad. You'd ask for more, Dad. So we know that Vic wants more in life. And look, coming from the son, I'm a son of immigrants. My father and mother constantly pumped into me to go and get more in this country, try and accomplish more in this world than they did. That's a thing that's in there, right? And you look at your immigrant parents, and sometimes they can say that, have that moment with you and say, look, we're doing great. You have no idea where we came from because all you know is the upbringing you had here. You have no idea, right? And so there's a really powerful storyline in that. And Michael, you bring stuff up. It's an excellent point in terms of the way he's being raised by his dad. It's different because Oz comes from a much more toxic raising. he comes from much more loving raising. So there's possibilities here. With the Graciela scene, he gives her money to help her go to where she wants to go. So his instinct is always to do good in the situation. It's just he's a young kid right now. He's got no father figure. He's lost his family. We saw him lose his family, which was a beautifully tragic scene. So Oz steps into this moment, is trying to manipulate a young kid, and we'll see where it ends up. But I love that we got this rich backstory with Victor. And this is where casting is important. You only have a few minutes on screen. You find good actors that have legitimate chemistry with each other, so you can come in and immediately buy into the relationships that they all have with each other. I mean, they only had like 1 or 2 exchanges with each other, but you bought it so that when the death happens and we pinpoint Victor looking at his house earlier in the scene, so that when we look again and seeing it all crash down, it's even more harrowing. And you're right, with Kristen Milioti with her eyes, those deep, soulful eyes, she is saying so much by just straight up looking at you and looking at a character. So seeing their interactions, I think, is a lot of fun to see. And then Victor later went with the cop. He's smart. This is the thing. Victor is smart. He's street smart. In the moment, he knew what to do by instinct. Even though he's scared, even though he stutters, he's got instincts, and that's going to help him out down the road. Yeah.
I don't think Victor 2 weeks ago would have known to do that.
No, 100%.
I think Victor pre-Oz, I mean, I think that's why that scene is so important. Victor pre-Oz would have been like a stammering mess, and then would have just like taken whatever the cop did. Like whatever the cop did to him, he would have been like, well, he's a authority figure. I have to listen to him. After being with Oz, even for this short period of time, he's like, what money?
Yes.
So you're seeing already that this hero that Johnny is so convinced is going to be a good guy is learning some very valuable lessons from his mentor, who is not a hero.
Right. He is learning how corrupt the world is, and so he's got to fight it, is what I think. But also, this is, I know you disagree, but that's how I see it. But the thing also that I love about this is that it's a commentary. Look, this is working on a commentary level. This is a commentary about immigrants. This is a commentary also about the idea of dealing with corruption with the police. I mean, he essentially got racially profiled. He's a young black kid of color in an expensive automobile. This guy immediately yanks him out of the vehicle to look. So there's commentary going on here about what's going on in our world. And also the fact that people want to lambast inner city kids, and they want to lambast it's all criminals and stuff. They don't understand that it's such a terrible upbringing. It's such a terrible place sometimes to exist, that when you have a loss of a father figure or a loss of a mentor, sometimes you will gravitate to someone who is successful in a certain business in order to maybe have some sort of power or control in your life. So you see all of this kind of bubbling under the surface, which I think is so essential. Let's move on with this for the rest of Victor's storyline here. Later he has, well, actually, you know what? Let's move to Oz and Sofia, and we'll get to that middle point. Sofia wants Oz to drive them, as we said, to drive around like the old days of their meeting. Oz sees that this new drug is coming from Arkham State Hospital. Clearly, it was Sofia who was in charge of this new plan, not that idiot Alberto who got shut up. Oz is shown, the whole mushroom business here makes a crack about, I don't know, you've been away too long. You know, they got shrooms in the dorms now. It's not that big of a deal. But this is something completely different. We meet Dr. Trey Bloom, who may or may not be Mr. Bloom from the DC Comics. And we understand this is a whole new, different type of drug that they're talking about. The next morning, Oz and Sofia meet with Link Sai, who is a Triad deputy, to pitch him on Bliss and their plans. They lie that Johnny Vitti is backing their play, and Link says he's in if Vitti calls Link's boss, Mr. Zhao, and confirms it. And at that lunch with Victor later on, Victor and Oz have a lunch there where where Oz is staking out Tina. Oz convinces Tina to set up Johnny Vitti, and Oz and Sofia walk in on them having sex, and they convince Vitti to call Mr. Zhao after some phone in the mouth coercion. So Shannon, interesting stuff here between Oz and Sofia as this new partnership progresses. Clearly, she's constantly in control of this situation. She doesn't trust Oz all the time, and she's always looking at him in certain moments. But we're seeing now the extent of this operation, and clearly Bliss is something possibly Scarecrow influenced, but certainly something coming out of Arkham State. Your thoughts on this?
Visually, just as they go into the lab, visually, I think, again, they're using their budget in the exact right way. Visually, having these white mushrooms that have this red sap, like, again, it's just eye-catching. It's something that just, it's just visually dynamic. And sometimes in television shows, and granted, this is a different exception because this is HBO, this is a limited series, but a lot of times in television series, these are the things that they don't have the time nor the money to spend on. But the fact that they are doing it, again, just kind of leans into the idea that there is a lot of care going into the making of this series. I love Oz's always he's always suspicious that people are talking down to him. Like when that very friendly chemist who's, like the ultimate stoner, like, welcome, brother. And then he talks about whatever the spores are. Hey, what'd you say to me? What'd you call me? Like, he's always ready to be offended. Like, he's someone that is street smart but not book smart, and he's very self-conscious of that. He's always ready to come back at someone. So I just thought that was a lot of fun. I mean, them going to the club in Chinatown, pause is such a wonderful thing to use in a series, because you can really kind of take in an actor's choices and an actor, what they're thinking in the moment. When Kristen Milioti says, Oz is working for me, and I paused it, and you just see this, it's a flash of a glare.
Yeah.
But if you pause it just so, it's just like all the vitriol that he has to these Falcons, who are all related to each other, they've always been breathing down his neck. It's all captured in that one glance. And you can see how at one point they did have a dynamic when he was her driver, as they kind of with the Triad lieutenant basically are like, oh yeah, Johnny Vitti, he's with us. Yeah, sure, we'll give him a call. And Kristen Milioti look at him like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, how is this going to work? I got a plan. Yeah, I can see you having fun. The scene with Michael Kelly, outstanding.
Yeah.
Like, so much fun. And again, even Johnny Vitti, everyone has their angle that they try to play. Like, first he tries to appeal to Oz. Like, you're going to back this psychopath over Luca? And then he goes to Kristen Milioti. He's like, you're going to trust this piece of shit? Like, he's looking for any port in a storm right there.
Yeah.
But watching how Oz just erupts, basically, stuffing that phone in his mouth. Like, you see the rage, and also how unbothered Kristen Milioti is by all of it. Like, it was just such a great scene.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Michael, here as we see the beginnings of the Oz and Sofia relationship coming back together after, obviously, we're going to hear about later on what he did possibly to send her to Arkham. Your thoughts on this as we progress through this sections of the show?
Yeah, really quickly, I wanted to touch on the first scene with Sofia and Johnny Vitti where he gives her the plane ticket and tells her to get out of town. Just echoing what I was saying before, which is Michael Kelly is great, and Johnny Vitti is this very powerful, confident character. And the entire scene, what's written on the page is him looking at her being like, look, I know you're crazy, but I'm not scared of you. You're just a spoiled little rich girl. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, he is coming at her with all of the just dripping with, I don't give a shit about you. And she just looks at him, and the only thing I'm thinking in the audience is like, oh, he gonna die. he is gonna die. Like, there is no way he makes, like, it was like, oh man, don't fuck with Sofia Falcon. Sofia and Oz, Kristen Milioti and Colin Farrell have such amazing chemistry together. Like, the two of them in any single scene, it really is electric, because you just get the sense of not only what they're saying, but what they're not saying. I mean, there is this entire dance that the two of them are doing because both of them are just trying to figure the other one out. Like, Oz, kind of to Shannon's point, is always like, and it's like what we've been saying, he's always just either one step behind or one step ahead, and he's shuffling to get a little, like with everything that's happening, they get there, he sees all of the Arkham stuff, and he's like, wait a minute, and he's like, oh wait, I thought this was Alberto's plan, and she just looks at him and she's like, I know you did, and just keeps going. Like he's sort of, but then it flips later when they're in with the Triads, and he makes his move, and he's like, yeah, Johnny Vitti, and like, so they're constantly like both trying to outmaneuver each other, and watching it go down is really, really fascinating. Echoing what Shannon said, just the visuals of this drug. Just the white mushrooms with the bright red sap coming out of them. Like, you ultimately could have gone into a room and just had a bunch of people packaging that red glass into those red pills into that vial of glass, and you would have gotten it. But the visual of those mushrooms just makes it so much more intense, so much more interesting.
Yeah.
So really, really loved that. And then, the entire scene where they go in to visit the Triads, like, you really see that. Well, actually, no, leading up to that, sorry. Oh, no, that does happen like this way. So you go in there and you see the Triad, and like just watching this entire conversation take place. Shannon's right about like that moment of Colin Farrell where she's like, he works for me. But before she turns to him after the meeting and says, what the fuck did you just do? The moment that Oz says, oh yeah, Johnny Vitti, we got Johnny Vitti. He's on our side. What's amazing is the lack of reaction from Sofia.
Yeah.
You see this thing, and I've done it before in my life, where it's a long blink. And if you know what's going on, you know the long blink is, what the fuck just happened? But that's all you get. And then she goes right along with it. So he's like, yeah, Johnny Vitti. And she just goes, yeah, Johnny Vitti. So, and like, she just goes right in there, she picks up where he left off. She's like, in front of them, these two are like, the two of them are a great team. And it's not until they're alone that she's like, and also, in the same way that Oz has that temper that we are about to see with Johnny Vitti, Sofia Falcone doesn't. She doesn't blow up at him. She doesn't go crazy. She just looks at him and goes, what are you not telling me about Johnny Vitti? Like, it's all very, very calm, very cold, and very terrifying. You're like, when is this going to blow? It's blowing at some point, but what's going to happen? The entire scene with Victor and Oz in the restaurant is...
We're going to get to that.
Are we talking about that, or are we saving that for Victor?
Next. We're getting that next.
I will come back to that.
Okay.
The scene with Johnny Vitti and Sofia, great. And Shannon really hit a lot of the main beats. The main thing is what made Penguin blow.
Yeah.
Johnny Vitti trying to play them both against each other, trying to like, let me see if there's a weakness over here. Nope. Fine, I'm going to go here. And again, as much as these two don't trust each other, they're a really great team. Johnny Vitti finds no weakness here that he can exploit.
Yeah.
And when he really goes in on Oz and says, yeah, you're fun at card games, but like, we keep you around to laugh at you. And when he calls him Penguin, I love that the choice that they've made here is that Penguin is an insult.
Yeah.
Penguin is the nastiest thing that they can say to him, and Oz hates it. And watching him get to the point where I'm assuming he's ultimately going to embrace this as his moniker and say, oh, well, fuck all of y'all, I made it to the top. The penguin rose to the top. But his just anger at that name and everything he's saying, and him just going in the way he goes in. And like, I never knew a cell phone in the mouth could be so brutal, but now that is like I'm like that. I'm gonna have nightmares about people putting my cell phone in my mouth. And again, yes, the way that Sofia just stands there and watches all this happen. She doesn't try and pull Oz off. She doesn't say, no, Oz, we need him, calm down. She just stands there and watches it all happen. And it's just absolutely, like, the two of them together is magic.
Yeah, I mean, this show is being led by three characters that are overlooked by society. And how they react to being overlooked is fascinating, because all three of them are going in three different directions. It's so interesting. Oz is easily poked. He's easily poked and will react. And then in the moment, figure out what to do after he reacts, right? Like he did with Alberto. Sofia is much more of a looker. She's an observer, and then she'll make her move, right? And Victor is more trying to figure out what's the right thing to do, what's the good thing to do, what am I supposed to go? Still figuring out, but they're all overlooked by society, trying to find power or trying to retake power in their lives. And it's fascinating to watch. And yes, their interactions, their chemistry, two fantastic actors dancing this dance, because Sofia does not trust him at all. And so she has to maintain this sense of, I'm in control, you're my driver. No matter how far you raise in life, you are still my driver, right? In her mind. And that's a dangerous attitude to have with Oz, because he's gotten bigger. You know, I'm reminded of Rounders when Edward Norton comes out of prison and he still thinks he can push grandma around, and grandma kicks the shit out of him in the bathroom to show him that those days are over. You know, it's that kind of changing of relationships. It's fascinating. So let's go back to Victor here and finish out his storylines later. As Michael was mentioning, he has lunch with Oz as they stake out Tina Falcone. Oz gaslights him with a whole spiel about, quote, taking up space, admonishes the waiter for correcting Victor's stutter, which he later has an issue with in the bathroom, and then raises a toast to Victor's dad after talking about, oh, yeah, he got screwed over by the man. He should have gotten more in life, blah, blah, blah. Victor is the bag man later on at the Triads Club, and we see a growing affection for him from Roxy, which I think is really important. They're just laying little seeds here. And as these explosions go off in the club, he gets a PSD attack and drops the Bliss on the ground. And this is so fast. This is great direction by Craig Zobel. The crystals of the Bliss matching the pebbles on the rooftop. Just genius with all of that. And I also think there's a connection here that the flood that wiped those people out in Victor's flashback to Crown Point, drugs are a flood that can wipe people out. And the connection here that he is facilitating that happening, for me, I love the symbolism of that. Later on, there's a tense back and forth with Oz in the bathroom. When Oz finds out Victor wants to leave, Oz pulls a gun on Victor and tells him that if he wants a nothing life, then he's already got one. Victor takes off in the purple monstrosity of a car to the bus station, watches Graciela get on the bus, can't join her, heads back to the club, and we'll find out what happens there. So, Michael, the lunch, the stuff at the club, and then him taking off to the bus station, but not ultimately getting on the bus.
Well, this is where John is gonna go. What? I don't think that what Oz is doing at this lunch is solely gaslighting. Like, I don't think it is just gaslight. There's an element, like there's always an element that Oz is doing what he's doing, but in the same way that Shannon says Oz uses everything in his arsenal, the thing that makes this scene great is that I think Oz is being genuine. Oz actually
he cares for him.
Oz genuinely likes Victor.
Yeah, I agree.
He sees the similarity in Victor's stutter to his impediment with his leg, but like that conversation about his dad and about how it's not right that his dad worked so hard and had the American dream but didn't get the rewards, and just and even what he does with the waiter, which he absolutely then does the opposite later on, but like that moment of, hey, you respect this guy, you let him finish his sentence. Like, I don't know that anyone's ever done that for Victor. I think that there's been lots of people in his life that have like put that word in for, oh, you mean, yes, frites, steak frites. Like, and the fact that the Penguin is like, no, let him do it. And he's like, you don't have to do it. And he's like, no, you should do it. You should do it for yourself. This is what you got going on. You let people wait for you. Like, it is this really great scene where, yeah, we know that ultimately Oz is a bad guy. We know that there's an element of this that he's using Victor for what he wants Victor to do. But I think what makes the later scene work when he does pull the gun on Victor is that like to Oz, he came away from this moment being like, I really like this kid. I really have a soft spot for this kid, and I really care about him. And he thinks like they've got a good thing going here.
Yeah.
And so then you go to the club, you've got the Bliss, you've got the drops. Victor's the bag man. Like, he always has like this little bit of a deer in head, even though he's getting into this vibe and he's actually pretty decent at it until the PTSD moment. He just always has this deer in headlight look. So there's something about him as a kid that you're just like, you don't quite belong here. In the way that he's dressed, in the way that he looks, they've really done a good job of, at no point does he look yet like he's like, yeah, this is his world. He always is a little bit of a fish out of water. And then the moment happens. I screamed when the Bliss went on the floor. I literally was like, that is thousands of dollars. Like, pick it up right now. Like, I got a little panicky for him, but
that's all our money, Karen. That's all our money.
I was like, ah! The Roxy relationship is interesting. I mean, again, they've done just a nice job of her kind of zeroing in on this guy who is Oz's driver, who doesn't look like much, but again, with her, it's kind of the same thing. Like, does she genuinely like him, or is she pinpointed a guy who's an up and comer because he's Oz's driver? Like, where does that fall in the thing? But yeah, then when he is in the bathroom and Oz comes in and sees that text message, the genuine hurt that Oz has.
Yeah.
The genuine, when he pulls that gun and says, is this what this feels like to you? Because he actually thought there was this burgeoning friendship, and to find out that this kid has just felt trapped by him the whole time.
Yeah.
it justifies why he lets him go. Like, he's like, get the fuck out of here. Like, I'm not keeping you here. You are not a prisoner. I was giving you the keys to the kingdom. Yeah. I was giving you my wisdom. I was giving you my knowledge. Like, you come from nowhere. You are nothing. And I was trying to pull you out of this and teach you the things that I was taught. And fuck you. Like, fuck you that you don't want this. And fuck, like, and the entire thing is just, Oz had his feelings hurt. Yep. Oz thought he had a friend, and he doesn't have a friend. Because no one else in Oz's in life is a friend. Everyone is a tool. Sofia is an ally, but she's not a friend. She can't be. The two of them don't know how to trust each other. The Falcones he hates. Like, he doesn't have anyone. You know, the closest relationships that we've seen him have are prostitutes, and he's paying them. And so there's always a level of this as a Victor was the one relationship that's not in his mind transactional. And to find out that Victor felt like he was trapped here, like he's just like, get the fuck out. And then Victor makes that choice. He goes and he has the opportunity. And like, and I think it's very important in this moment that like Victor's free and clear.
Yeah.
Oz told him he could go. He could get on that bus. Oz is not going to come after him. No one in the Falcone family knows anything about him. Like, he's free and clear. He can get on that bus. He can start his life outside of Gotham, and that is good to go. And he looks at her. He looks at this girl. To Shannon's point, he looks at what might have been, and he goes, I don't want this anymore. Like, I want more. And what does he say to his dad in the beginning of this episode? We could have more. He now has the means and the person that can give him more, and that's the choice he makes, which is why he's not going to be a hero at the end of this thing. But
yeah, I couldn't disagree with you more. But you know, we're going to find out. And if you watched ahead, that's not fair in our game. So I hope you haven't. And Leonard,
I have only watched these 3 episodes. This is all that I have watched. We are now even.
And Brian Leonard, keep your damn mouth shut. Don't say anything. Don't tell him anything. Shannon, your thoughts on the stuff happening here with Victor and the progression as he does by the end, and we'll get to it, accept this path for now in his life. Your thoughts on the progression here from the lunch through the stuff at the club and then into that moment at the bus station.
So I think something that Vogel touched on that has made something kind of click in my head is there is a difference in Oz's point of view between insulting him and hurting him. He has been insulted. He was insulted by Alberto in that first episode. He was insulted by Johnny Vitti, which is what prompted that violent reaction.
Oh yeah.
He was hurt by Vic, by the idea that I'm trying to help you. You're throwing that help in my face.
Right.
So I think had he been insulted, he would have killed Vic. But he was hurt. He was emotionally hurt, which ultimately I think does speak to like he does have some sort of connection with this kid. Will that connection last? Probably not. John thinks he's going to put on a cape. Vogel thinks he's going to be a crime lord. I think he's going to die. Because I think ultimately he is a good person. He is going to go down this road, but he's not built for the road. He's only built to go so far, and that's why I think Oz probably going to kill him at the end. But that scene at lunch, that is a genuine connection. Like the whole time he's talking about his family, like Oz is your friend in the moment. When he's saying something to you in the moment, I think he 100% believes it unless he is actively trying to work you. But in that moment when he says, what your dad did, that's not fair. That's how it should be, but that's not the way the world is. Like that is not fair. So you see this connection as Vic is saying all this stuff. In my head, I'm thinking, don't say anything else because he's going to use all of this against you later.
Yep.
That moment in the club, like we've seen that moment with Roxy in the last episode, that this is a beautiful woman who in any other situation would not be paying attention to me. But because I'm this guy's driver, because I work for this individual, he's kind of interesting to her, and he's probably not used to a high class looking lady of the night paying attention to him in that way. Oh no, sorry, she's not a lady of the night, a cam girl. Excuse me.
Yeah, cam.
A high price cam girl who sometimes works a lot with cake.
Works with cake.
That being said, Graciela's no slouch. She's beautiful. So
absolutely.
A good choice to have. It's a good issues we have. Yeah.
The PTSD, I agree with you, Johnny. The way that they shot that was fantastic. Like that, the like the little bit of pyro that's going off in the club, it triggers this, this panic attack that is similar to this, traumatic event that is set up at the beginning of the episode. I had the same thought as Vogel when all those little glass vials hit the ground in a club packed full of druggies. And I'm like, someone's going to step on it. It's all going to get lost. The scene in the bathroom, again, absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah. Because again, you do see that Oz does have a heart. Like it is a misshapen, scarred and wordy heart, but it is a heart nonetheless. And again, I think had Vic insulted him, he would have killed him. Yeah. But watching Vic make that decision, like, you know what, screw you, I'm taking your car. And that moment that he does see, as Vogel already put, the life that could have been. I'm doing a lot of my own headcanon, but basically he's like, yes, my dad tried to do the right thing. If my dad had worked it better, maybe we wouldn't have been in that apartment where that water took my family away. Like, you can see the justification in his head. And at the end, when he saves Oz, like when, he knocks over the Maronis henchman and saves him. Like, again, this bond is just strengthening and strengthening and strengthening.
Yep. I just think that the life she offered him isn't the life he wanted, but he does want a better life. It's not binary. There are multiple paths here. I think he does want more, but what he wants is in his city, and that is Gotham, which he loves, and Crown Point, which he loves. Graciela was always trying to run away from it, not Victor. Victor wants to stay. He wants to save his city. And the big twist, I think, that is coming is that Oz, in essence, is training the hero that will counter the Penguin constantly, because who knows him better? This Penguin will be Victor's Joker. That's what I think down the road. We'll see. Anyway, later that night, let's move to Oz and Sofia. Oz and Sofia meet with Dr. Zhao. They put Mr. Zhao, not Dr. Zhao. They put the plan in motion by giving Bliss.
Maybe he went to med school. We don't know.
Yeah, maybe he did. Maybe he's smart about this stuff. PhD. Anyway, we see this stuff going on in the club. Sofia clocks the intimate connection that Oz has with Eve, which maybe puts his little alibi in question, calls him out for what he did to her and that she isn't a kid anymore. She reminds him that Zhao was there to see her and not him. Big mistake, huge in my mind. Sofia and Oz, who can't help himself, negotiate with Mr. Zhao, and Sofia uses the Riddler's attack as a reason why this drug will sell. We get a montage of the effect of the drug on the club goers, as I mentioned earlier. When Mr. Zhao hesitates, Sofia mentions that she can bring the deal to the Neon Dragons or the Odessa Mob, which you can look those up in the DC comics and their connections. Later, Oz tells Sofia that the deal went through. When they're outside, he sees that Sofia isn't happy, and they have a hard back and forth exchange about what he did to her. He says he didn't think that that Carmine would send her to Arkham. She claims that she's not the Hangman, which I've kind of suspected for a while now. And then the other thing is that he doesn't apologize for what it led him to, that he went and got what he wanted in this life. And that's his approach to the world. And just when this hard back and forth might lead to some kind of acceptance between both of them, Nadia Maronis shows up with her men. They confront Oz at gunpoint. And as Shannon was saying, Victor pulls up in the car, sees this happening, saves Oz by slamming into one of Maronis' men. Doesn't kill him, slams into him, and Oz jumps in, leaving Sofia behind. So Shannon, your thoughts on these ending scenes here between Oz and Sofia in the club, and then later when they're having conversations and Victor's appearance?
Colin Farrell and Kristen Milioti, again, we've talked about this multiple times in this episode, multiple times over the series. They just have fantastic chemistry together. Yeah. They just work so well together, and filling in all these gaps of what has happened in the past. Because again, we still don't know what has happened. Like, we're going to find out next week. Right. But we still don't know what actually went down. But the Oz being Sofia's only option, she makes that pretty clear on the regular about, like, even though she might not be using those words, those looks, she's like, if I could use anybody else, I would, but I got you. And I'm going to use you as much as you are going to try to use me. So again, the tears that Oz has, as I'm watching them, are these crocodile tears? I'm like, no, because he's talking about himself.
Yep.
Like he's literally saying, I am not going to apologize for wanting more. Like I did what I had to do. I'm sorry that's what had to happen, but I'm not going to apologize for getting the thing that I wanted. The whole thing with the Maronis showing up and Oz hopping in the car saying leave her. I can't wait for probably episode 5 when we're going to see the reckoning that happens because he left Sofia behind. Fantastic episode, fantastic scenes.
Yeah. Your thoughts here, Mike, on what happens here with Oz and Sofia as they go into this club and set everything up with Zhao, her mentioning that she'll go with other people if she has to, and then they're back and forth there before Victor shows up and saves Oz.
I think the main thing about the Sofia speech in the club is that the main thing, the main reason Zhao doesn't want to work with her is because she was in Arkham. Like he's like, I know, like it's like, look, yeah, your dad wasn't great. I hate your dad. I'm glad he's gone, but I don't know you, and you're crazy. And so her sort of using the fact that she was in Arkham and that's where this drug came from and that's how she knows about it, and talking about the despair that you feel in Arkham and comparing that to the despair that everyone in Gotham is feeling because everything has been taken away from them, and this drug will make that feeling go away. It was really well done to use something that would be an obvious weakness and turn it into a strength. And you just see how convincing she can be. I mean, in a way, she's doing her version of what Oz does, which is, oh, I can't trust you. No, of course you can't trust me, but you could trust this. Like they both have this way of like being like, let me think on my feet. Let me turn this thing around. So they did it. It's a really good speech, and the way it's shot, the way it's kind of cut over everybody dancing and you see the effect of the Bliss, like it's really, really well done. But I think the meat of this end of this episode is really the scene between the two of them outside. Yeah. Now we talked about it last week. Oz tells Victor at one point, I was a driver for somebody. They taught me a lot. Then they got pinned by the feds and got killed. But Falcone saw something in me and rose me up. But now we find out that she's the driver and he did something at some point that got her sent to Arkham, and that then he got a lot out of it. So I'm thinking that was that he took the Sofia story and tweaked it and left some details out. But I think that there's a piece of truth in there, and the piece of truth is that whatever he did to like sort of double cross Sofia did get him where he is, which is more or less what they say in this scene. Yeah. I also like really am curious as to whether she's the hangman or whether she was the hangman or not. I think whether she was the hangman or not, she's about to be the hangman for reals. Like I think that even if she wasn't, I mean, I'm really curious because like what Oz really says is, look, I feel shitty, but like I didn't know your dad was going to put you in Arkham. Right. Like, Arkham. Like that's like I thought he was going to like get, send you away or do this or do that. I had no idea this was going to happen. Again, sort of saying, yeah, I did this thing to move ahead, but you can't blame me for this, blame your dad. Like it's like he's parsing things really, really thin here. But he does. And to Shannon's point, I think what he does ultimately say to her is honest, because she keeps saying, was it worth it? Was it worth it? Like, you're nothing. You're not a made guy. You're not a made guy. And when he's like, what I have might not seem like a lot to you, but this is a lot to me. Yeah. Like this is more than anyone like me has ever gotten. And so, yeah, like it was worth it. I'm really sorry. I am really sorry that it was worth it, but it was. And I'm sorry that you got sent to Arkham. That's not on me. But then the best part of the whole episode to me is that you get to the end, and I think the most honest thing that Sofia Falcone has said in this whole series is she goes, I don't know where to go from here. I don't know how to trust you. And he says, let me show you. And you're like, okay, this is where these two start to work together. Okay, it's gonna be great. That then everything goes to shit, and Victor says, what about Sofia? And he's immediately like, fuck her, let's get out of here. Like this beautiful moment of let me show you that I'm trustworthy, and then immediately is like, fuck that bitch, get the fuck out of here. And also, just really quickly, Oz's pure absolute joy that Victor came back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Obviously because it got him out of the jam and he got away from the Maronis, which great. But him like just laughing and being like, I knew you were gonna come back. Yeah. I knew you were gonna make the right choice. Like because now Victor is no longer a prisoner. Victor is now very, very truly his mentor, like his mentee. Like this relationship is now more equal. Not equal. Well, Oz is always, but it's more equal than it has been up to this point, and Oz is thrilled about it.
Yeah. I mean, you guys touched on all. It's all great. I just think it's fascinating to watch a show. Again, you have this interaction with Sofia and Oz is very similar to the Oz and Victor lunch in that they're all talking about the positions they come from, right? And go back all the way to the beginning. His dad saying to Victor, we have a lot. This is actually a lot. You don't understand. This is a lot. In that situation, Victor is like Sofia. Victor was born into this kind of existence and has no idea the terrible existence his father came from. The same thing with Sofia. Sofia was born into this Falcone crime empire and has always known this kind of rich luxury and crime and all of that. Oz wasn't. Oz had to scramble and fight. So Sofia can't understand why wanting to be a capo is such a big deal to Oz because she was born into privilege. So it's an interesting comment. And all three of them are overlooked people. And so they have to find a way to understand each other going forward. Him with the coming from a poverty and the limp, her with being a woman, and Victor being a person of color from an inner city. So there's so much that they're touching on in this show. Even if you don't look for that, the show works great. But the fact that it's all there as an undercurrent, I think is amazing about this show. So phenomenal stuff. All right. Is that good? Are we anything more to say? Shall we wrap it up there? All right. Well, there you go. That's our spoiler review for episode 3, Bliss of the Penguin. Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate it madly. Hopefully we covered everything you all wanted us to cover in this show. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, I'd like to follow us on social media. On Twitter, it's at geek_buddies. On Instagram, at the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you'd like to follow Mr. Vogel and you think people are going to turn out bad, it's at MKToon. If you'd like to follow Mr. Rocha and think people are going to turn out good, it's at the Rocha Says.
The irony of that.
Agreed.
Go ahead and smash that like button below. Subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page. Check out all the amazing content he's got there. Leave your comments below. What did you think of this episode? What do you think of the Penguin? What do you think of the proper way to handle a Batman villain in his own movie? Let's put it all down there below. If you're listening to us on a podcast, leave us some stars and comments there so we go up in the rankings. And as always, the best thing you can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
There you go. And if you're watching it this morning, we are going live at 5 p.m. PT tonight, 5 p.m. PT Monday night tonight to talk about Joker Folie à Deux. Whoo, we got a lot to say on that.
It's going to be a different kind of conversation.
Michael's been hinting at it the entire episode. So stay tuned for that at 5 p.m. PT. And until then, we'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review of The Penguin on Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek
Buddies.